I'm here with Karla Freeze. We met through Tim Kaufman, and she's got a great story. Has actually lost 223 pounds. And so, Karla, first off, thanks for taking the time, and maybe we could just start off with a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Thanks for asking me. I am in central Illinois, a town called Champaign, the home of the University of Illinois. And I have lived in Illinois this time for about 16 years.
And so, I think your biggest, you were 371 pounds. What was life like at that point?
It was not good. I was unhappy and I had issues like I would break a chair at somebody's picnic, or I had the Southwest Airlines attendant tell me that I could not fit in the seat. And I argued with her. I said, yes, I can. And of course, she wanted me to buy another ticket. But the days of traveling, I used to do a lot of traveling, and I always had to have the seatbelt extension. And that was just totally humiliating. I felt like people stared at me all the time, especially children, because of my size.
I think in a message you mentioned to me that you had been overweight since elementary school, and that your mother actually had you on your first diet when you were in fifth grade.
Correct.
Can you talk about your relationship with your weight, even as a small child?
Sure. I was in a household that was very, abusive in a way. My mother was very weight conscious, and she was constantly worried about her weight, which then, of course, I was the only girl, so she was constantly worried about my weight. And so even though I was not technically, by the definition, overweight, my mother thought that she was just afraid that I was going to be heavy, and she was very concerned about me. And everybody would say, "Oh, you have such a pretty face." And I remember in seventh grade, I weighed 126 pounds, which, looking back now, 126 was a very okay weight. But at that point in time, I was told that I was heavy, and I was about the same height that I am now. So it was definitely just not a happy childhood, because everything was focused on weight. Everything was focused on food. And on one hand, I'm being told that I need to lose weight. And on the other hand, it's eat everything on your plate because there's children in Africa that are starving.
Wow. And what did food kind of look like for you back then?
It was just typical. My mom was a very good cook, and she planned out our menus every week, and we had, a meat and three. Every night we sat down to dinner together. My dad traveled, so he wasn't there, but I have two brothers, and we all sat down as a family and ate dinner every night.
I know you said your mom had you on a diet, but then you said you always finish your plate. Was there kind of a connection back then of the food to weight or food to health?
I would say not till I started maybe junior high, or even into high school, where I was more concerned about my appearance and the dating, and the fact that I felt like I was maybe overweight. But looking back, of course, is 2020's hindsight. I was really never that overweight. I just was convinced by my mother that I was, and it made me feel very uncomfortable, obviously, to even be in that time period. It was just not a good thing. I mean, people just thought poorly of you when you were overweight. So.
And then did you have many people around you? I know you said you weren't necessarily super overweight, but were there other people around you that were, maybe heavier as well? Or, was everybody pretty thin?
Everybody was pretty thin, and that's probably why it made me feel more overweight than I really probably was. And I just happened to have like larger legs, that just the way I was made, and so I couldn't wear boots. And back then, boots were the thing. And back in the in the late 60s and early 70s when we had the go-go boots, and I couldn't get them because my legs were too big. But basically, that was kind of the beginning of that I couldn't wear the cute things, and so there was something wrong with me.
And then what, I know you go from there, which it sounds from what you're saying, you weren't hugely overweight to at your biggest, you were 371 pounds.
Right.
What kind of changed and what happened, between that time and maybe even how long was that?
I would say I was not very very social. And I did not ever feel attractive. And so I was always looking for love in all the wrong places, as the saying goes. And had some bad experiences, some bad relationships. And I then felt like perhaps food was my answer and food was my comfort. And looking back also, I think maybe I gained a lot of the weight as a protection to surround myself, to keep me safe. And I was still relatively healthy. I had not even been in the hospital until I weighed 371 pounds, and the doctor, I had been diagnosed with sleep apnea the year before that, but when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, that was 2008. So that was many, many years from the time that I first felt I was not worthy of a relationship, a good relationship, decent relationship, or a healthy relationship.
I know you mentioned, being on the plane. What other kind of frustrations or struggles did you have when you were bigger that, looking back now, you no longer have to deal with?
Well, my stomach was so big it would rub against the steering wheel, and it was a dark red car, and so my shirts always got dark red, like on the front of them, because my stomach was rubbing up against. There's a lot of places that I couldn't fit into, a lot of seats I couldn't fit into, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of humility. I broke a seat in my car because it was so heavy, and the anchors of the seat went through the bottom of the vehicle, and then it had to be taken to a body shop and reinforced because I was so heavy. Yes, that was rough.
Yeah, and so 2008, you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Why do you think that diagnosis kind of, made you realize, something was seriously wrong?
Because I had been relatively healthy my whole life despite my weight. And so that was just like a wake-up call for me. I don't want to be sick. And of course, my weight contributed to that. And that was, like I said, a wake-up call for me. I just don't know what other trigger there was. I mean, perhaps it was just a lot of things along the road, and that was like the straw that broke the camel's back as such. But that was my turning point right there.
Wow. And then, I'm just thinking, and I don't know that you necessarily had a number in mind, but I'm thinking now, you have 223 pounds to lose. How do you kind of approach that in a way that doesn't seem insurmountable?
That's a good question. I really wasn't even focused on the weight. I was focused on not being diabetic. It was about my health to begin with, and I just didn't want to be diabetic. And the week that I found out, I was out with friends, and they wanted to go out for ice cream, and they were like, aren't you going to have ice cream? I said, no. And they said, why not? And I said, because it's not good for me now that I know that I'm diabetic. I'm not going to eat ice cream. But I said, I'll be happy to go with you. Y'all eat ice cream. So it was always about, I was really very good about, once I made the decision, I stuck with it. I didn't want to be diabetic. I didn't want to be sick. And I didn't know at the time that high cholesterol also goes hand in hand with that. So that was diagnosed at the same time, the same day. And my doctor immediately put me on medicine, and I was just sad.
What did the weeks and the months following that? You had lived for so long, I'm guessing, kind of with a certain expectation of food or life, and now all that's changing. What kind of things did you put in place to really kind of set yourself up for success?
Well, based on what the doctor recommended. I saw a nutritionist and I saw a dietitian, and I went to some classes for diabetics and learned what they recommend. Um, at this point in time, I know now differently, but back then I just took the steps that the dietitian and nutritionist recommended. No sugar, no carbs or low carbs, and high protein. The doctor or the dietitian was actually recommending that I get 85 grams of protein a day. And so that's what I was striving for. And of course, testing my blood sugar twice a day and taking my medicine as I was supposed to. So I had a very good routine and very specific about what I was eating. And the high protein, I ate a lot of cheese and a lot of chicken and regular diet.
Yeah, yeah. So how'd that work out for the diabetes and the cholesterol?
Well, it didn't, but of course that's what we know now. But back then, that's what they were still preaching. Unfortunately, I think they're still preaching that somewhat. But uh, I lost a lot of weight, but I never did totally give up my diabetes as such. The diabetes didn't give up on me until after I gave up the animal products.
Well, so kind of where are you at? Can you talk about where you're at with all of that now?
Sure. Like I said, I lost quite a lot of weight eating a regular standard American diet, but I felt deprived. And after a while, I started gaining it back, which of course we all do. And it was because I hadn't gotten rid of the diabetes. Perhaps I got a bit discouraged and I felt deprived, like I said. And so I wanted ice cream and I wanted pizza and just the typical diet. And so I started gaining it back. And then my mother had some health issues, and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she was declining. And it made me rethink my life because my father's sister at that point in time was very, very ill with Alzheimer's, and his dad had passed away with Alzheimer's, and my mom's mother had passed away with Alzheimer's. And I thought, oh my gosh, what are the odds of me getting Alzheimer's? And it's such a horrible disease. So I started researching how can I even attempt to prevent Alzheimer's? What can I do that would even possibly help not get Alzheimer's? And all the while watching my mother decline, and she's still alive at this point in time. But that's when I found out about plant-based eating. And that was my Christmas present to myself on December 22nd, 2012. And I've never looked back. I have refined it and to not include oil. But as soon as I gave up the animal products, my diabetes went away and my high cholesterol went away. And subsequently, I had a lot of anxiety and I was on meds for anxiety. So that went away. And so I'm no longer on any meds at all.
Wow. So how many meds were you on kind of at the height?
I was on 4 pills a day plus cream for my psoriasis and antibiotics for my gums.
Okay, and then you're free of all that now.
I'm free of all that now.
Wow, that's awesome. I know that you said that you weigh less and you have more energy than you have in 40 years. What do you find yourself doing these days with all that energy?
It's really unfathomable. If no one has experienced it, they really can't even imagine what it's like. From the humility and the total defeat of weighing 371 pounds going through life and trying to make it even through doors and chairs and getting in cars, that it was just, and the airplane seats we talked about, it was just simply difficult. And now I'm so often the smallest one in the room and smallest one in photos. And I still look in the mirror every time I pass by the mirror because I don't believe it, because it's like magic. It's just so much like magic that the plants have nourished me this well and healed my body so well and allowed me as a side effect to lose so much extra weight. It's just amazing. You're right. The energy is just overwhelming. That I mean, I get up at 4:15 every morning. I go to bed at 8:30. I sleep my 8 hours, 7 hours and a half, something like that. But my body rests well, and I do whatever I want to do. My days are totally full, and I'm running all day long.
And then, I know you kind of talked about, it sounded like, at some point in life you had developed some of those negative relationships with food. How has that changed, and how have you kind of been able to navigate that through the years?
Because now every bite of food I take either nourishes my body or it feeds disease is my philosophy. And so I make a choice every time I eat, whether or not I'm going to eat for health or eat for disease. And I've been eating for health since December the 25th, 2012. Every bite.
Wow, that's awesome. And, did it, I don't know necessarily, what your eating was like back then, but did it take a while for you to kind of like new foods or relearn what your favorites were?
Well, that's a good point. There were a lot of foods, because I hadn't ever eaten a lot of fruits and vegetables before. There were a lot of vegetables that I didn't like. And as you make choices that are healthier, your taste buds change. Our taste buds change. And so, because I used to hate asparagus, and of course that's one of my favorites now, I think, how could I ever have hated asparagus? And I used to hate sweet potatoes, and I have them all the time now. It's interesting how your body changes, and how your perspective changes, and how your taste buds change. And as well as feeding my health, I also am reminded every time I talk to my mother, as a reinforcement, that I never, ever, ever want Alzheimer's. And so that keeps me motivated as well. Yes, absolutely. There's a peace in my heart. There is a calmness about my whole life. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm not harming any being or damaging the earth, as well as I'm not hurting myself. I'm doing everything I can to protect my health. And I think that comes with a calmness and a peace inside. And it's a lot easier for me to navigate the negativity in the world, and by just staying positive, because my outlook on life is so much better, because I'm just so much happier, because I'm healthier. I think it's all self-care.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sometimes it's easy to forget about taking care of ourselves when we're taking care of other people.
Yes.
I know that you do some personal consultations for people in your area who are kind of making a transition. Can you talk
Yes.
about that a little bit?
I am helping a friend of 40 years at this point in time. She was diagnosed with kidney disease, and the doctor is wanting to put her on dialysis. And I told her, would you allow me to help you with some suggestions on changing your diet to see if that would work to improve your kidney function, rather than just giving up and going on dialysis. And so she's been working on her diet for about 3 months now, and we've gone from 17% kidney function up to 23% kidney function so far at this point in time, simply by cutting out the animal products.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep. And then I have assisted a multitude of people just by walking the walk and them seeing what I've accomplished. And then they ask me, what are you doing? And how are you doing it? And isn't that hard? And everybody always asks about the protein. Are we not getting enough protein? And I'm actually going to give a seminar this weekend, or a workshop, I should say, on self-care. as I was just saying earlier, because it is all about taking care of ourselves. And if we take care of ourselves, then we can take care of others much more easily.
Yeah. Well, what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe at the beginning of this journey, who's hearing this and is wanting to get started to turn things around and is could use some words of encouragement? What would that be?
Believe in yourself. Believe that you can do what you want to do with this type lifestyle. And it's not hard. It seems hard. Everybody thinks it seems hard, and it's really not. If you would give it like 30 days to allow your taste buds to change, everything will be beautiful and vibrant and taste wonderful, and you'll just, every bite that you take will feed your health, and you'll know that inside. And it's not hard. It's like magic.
And then if you could go back in time and give some advice to your 223-pound heavier self and give that person some encouragement, maybe before you decided, before you got that diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, what words of encouragement would you give that person?
Wow, that's a hard one. That you are worthy. You are worthy of good health. You are worthy of optimal health, and you are worthy of taking care of yourself.
Awesome. And then where can people find out, what you've got going on and connect with you?
I have a Facebook page. The company name is Purely Plants, and I have a Facebook page called Purely Plants, and it's simply information and educational articles and some testimonials and a few recipes to help people just learn more, just understand more about it. And then if you're interested in doing Skype or in the central Illinois area, I'll be happy to do a personal consultation. And my email address is purelyplants@yahoo.com.
Great. Well, I'll include links to all that. One thing that you wrote that I thought was a good place to leave it, and you kind of alluded to it there, was this. Every day I'm eating for my health and well-being. What I've gotten back in return is my life. So many side effects that were a surprise to me. And it's such a simple concept that so many find overwhelming. It's a simple choice. Every single bite, choose health, choose yourself. So, Karla, thanks so much for the time and for the inspiration. And congratulations on your 223-pound weight loss. And hopefully I'll look forward to connecting with you soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.